Discovering a mysterious tavern in the woods at midnight. What happens will haunt you forever. The moon hung low in the sky, its silver light casting eerie shadows over the darkened forest. Whispers of wind rustled through the leaves, hinting at secrets long forgotten. Then, through the thick branches, a flicker of warm light caught Emily's eye. Was it a fire? A beacon? Curiosity pulled her in like a magnet. She stepped cautiously, heart pounding, as if the forest itself was watching her. As she trudged through the thick underbrush, the light grew brighter, revealing the outline of a tavern that appeared as if plucked from a fairy tale. Its wooden beams twisted with age, and a crooked sign swung slowly, creaking ominously in the night air. The Lost Lantern, it read. If only that foreboding name hadn't sent chills down her spine. Emily stepped closer, entranced by the glowing windows. From inside, the sound of laughter mingled with a strange, haunting melody. Was it real? Who were these people? Tension hung in the air like a thick fog. Before she could think, a heavy door suddenly swung open. A couple emerged, laughter spilling out like a warm embrace, but their faces turned pale as they noticed her. You shouldn't be here. The woman gasped, her voice trembling as if grappling with a nightmare. It's not safe at night. She grabbed her partner's hand and hurried into the shadows, leaving Emily standing in the doorway of that mysterious tavern, her mind racing. What lay behind that door? Was it a refuge or a trap? Emily felt a lump in her throat. The music swelled, echoing in her ears, pulling her further in. Suddenly, the laughter turned to screams, and for a brief moment, the jovial atmosphere morphed into chaos. Her hands shook as she took a step inside, heart racing. The tavern was full of strangers, their faces glowing in the light, but their eyes were all glued on her, as if she were a ghost appearing from nowhere. Just then, a thick silence took over, both captivating and terrifying. All eyes were on her, and for a fleeting moment, she felt their collective judgment. Who is she? Someone whispered sharply. The tension intensified as an unsettling question hung in the air. Was she in danger? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the music returned, the air thickened with tension. Emily felt breathless. What was happening? The tavern seemed alive, every corner buzzing with unspeakable stories. Shadows danced in the flickering light, the laughter now dripping with something darker. She needed to find out why everyone was staring. Each heartbeat marked the seconds of her hesitation, threatening to drown her in fear. With renewed resolve, she scanned the room, but one figure caught her eye. A man in a wide-brimmed hat stood in the corner, shrouded in darkness. His gaze was piercing, drawing her like a moth to flame. Come here, he whispered, his voice smooth and inviting, yet deeply unsettling, like a siren song luring her closer to a perilous edge. What was his story? Who were the other patrons? And why had she dared to step into the shadowy realm? As she took a cautious step forward, the world around her vanished in a swirl of noise and light. The tavern's secrets were about to unfold, and Emily's heart raced with a mix of dread and excitement. Little did she know, what lay ahead would change everything. Emily's pulse quickened as she approached the man in the wide-brimmed hat. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows across his face, accentuating the sharp angles and deep-set eyes that seemed to pierce straight through her. The noise of the tavern faded into a distant hum, replaced by the thudding of her own heart, the anticipation curling in her stomach like a snake ready to strike. Who are you? She managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. No one seemed to notice her question, lost in their own reverie, their laughter and chatter like an otherworldly symphony. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You'll find out soon enough, he replied, his voice smooth and inviting yet laced with something sinister. As he gestured for her to sit, a chill crept down her spine. There was something intoxicating about his presence, a magnetic pull. Against her better judgment, she settled at a small table in the corner, feeling the weight of the other patron's stares pressing down on her like a thick fog. "Welcome, traveler," the man said, leaning forward so that she could catch the faintest trace of his breath. "It's not often we get company out here in the woods. Tell me, what brings you to the Lost Lantern?" She hesitated, grappling with the storm of confusion swirling within her. "I saw the light," she replied, her voice trembling. The tavern surged back to life around them, with laughter breaking through again, but a dark undertone lingered that kept her on edge. It was as if the music sang of peril, not joy. "Ah, the allure of a light in the darkness. It tends to draw in the curious and the foolish," he replied with an unsettling grin. "But worry not, my dear. You're safe here for now." Emily exchanged glances with the other patrons, their heads bent close, whispering words that flitted just out of her hearing range. A heavy tension hung in the air, and a sense of urgency gripped her. She needed to know more. "What is this place?" The man chuckled softly, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. "This is a sanctuary of sorts, a place where the lost come to find something they seek." His gaze bored into her, intense and probing. "But be cautious. Not everyone leaves with what they came for." The eeriness of his words wrapped around her like a shroud. She could feel the eyes of the other patrons upon her, dissecting her every move. One woman, cloaked in shadows at the far end of the bar, lifted her glass and tossed back its contents, her eyes narrowing as she glared at Emily. A flash of concern filled Emily's heart. She was not just a stranger here. "What do you mean?" she pressed, desperation tingling in her fingers. But before the man could respond, a loud crash erupted from the far side of the tavern. Glass shattered and a figure stumbled through the crowd, his face pale and eyes wide with terror. "They're coming," he shouted, his voice cracking with panic as he veered toward the door, a whirlwind of fear following him. Emily felt a jolt of horror. Who was coming? The laughter fell silent once more, replaced by whispers of dread, the atmosphere thickening with an electric charge. Suddenly, the man in the hat leaned back, a look of amusement playing across his face as he regarded Emily. "Welcome to the true nature of the Lost Lantern." Emily's mind raced, her heart pounding in her ears. What had she walked into? As she tried to process the chaos unfurling around her, the tavern door burst open, and cold night air swept in, carrying with it an ominous presence that seemed to grip the very core of her being. What awaited her in the shadows? And were the tavern's secrets as sinister as they appeared? Each heartbeat echoed her dread as she realized she might be deeper in trouble than she ever imagined. Before she could grasp her next thought, footsteps echoed toward her. Was someone coming for her? Who or what was lurking outside the safety of the tavern's light? Fear wrapped its icy fingers around her heart as she braced herself for the unfolding nightmare. The tavern fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the frantic breaths of the man who had burst in. He staggered, his wide eyes darting around as if he expected something monstrous to rush through the door behind him. Emily's breath caught in her throat, and she could barely pull her gaze from the stranger before her. "The door!" he yelled, his voice rising with terror. "They're coming for us. We need to barricade it." Panic reigned as patrons leaped to their feet, some grabbing tables and chairs to shove against the door, while others murmured hurried questions what was coming. Who were they? Emily's heart pounded in her chest, the face of the man in the hat still looming in her mind, entertained by the chaos. Did he know what was happening? Was he part of whatever was spilling into their reality? As the noise crescendoed, the air thickened with fear. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls, illuminating faces twisted in anxiety. She caught the gaze of the woman from the bar, her expression now a mask of sharp determination. With trembling hands, Emily stood, wanting desperately to talk to someone, but the atmosphere held her hostage. The man in the hat leaned back in his chair, spreading his hands in front of him, an eerie calmness radiating from him. Isn't this just a delightful turn of events? Delightful? Emily shot back, her voice rising in anger and disbelief. People are panicking, and you find this amusing? A show, my dear, he exclaimed, eyes gleaming with some dark satisfaction. The true nature of the Lost Lantern is unfolding. What do you mean? She demanded, growing more frustrated. But before he could answer, a blood-curdling howl echoed through the woods outside, chilling her to the bone. The door bucked as something heavy slammed against it. Someone screamed a high, piercing sound that sliced through the tension. Chairs were pushed back, and the patrons drew closer together, their eyes wide and raging with fear. Emily's heart raced as the sounds grew louder. Claws against wood, slick slithering forms just outside the threshold. "What is out there?" she implored, now standing by the bar. "What is coming for us?" The man in the wide-brimmed hat waved a hand dismissively. "That, my dear, is for you to discover. Fear can be an illuminating guide, don't you think?" She wanted to smack that amused look off his face, but she couldn't afford to waste time on him now. The darkness outside seemed alive, a presence that throbbed with menace. She glanced around at the faces surrounding her. All were trapped in their own fear, yet there was something in their eyes that showed a grim determination. They were all in this together. Then suddenly, silence enveloped the tavern. No more howls, no more scratching. It felt as if the world held its breath. Emily dared to step closer to the door, horrified yet compelled to see what awaited them. "Stay back," a man shouted, grabbing her arm, pulling her back into the dim light. A strange thumping began, slow, heavy, as if something immense was approaching the door. Every heartbeat might be the last. Emily could feel the tension stretch like a taut wire, threatening to snap. Shadows danced just beyond the threshold, and the energy in the room swirled around her like a storm. She had to know what was out there then. A loud crash. The door broke open, splintering against the force of whatever had been hiding in the night. As the shards flew, Emily caught sight of an enormous shape outlined against the darkness, a creature twisted with fury and intent. It advanced into the light of the tavern, revealing glowing eyes that glinted with hunger. What had she stumbled into? And was there still a chance to survive? As the tavern erupted into chaos once more, Emily felt her breath quicken, the very essence of fear building with every passing moment. A voice whispered through the din, "You must choose." Choose what? She could hardly think as the world spiraled into darkness around her. But she would have to decide, and quickly. And with that ominous reality, she began to wonder if she could uncover the truth behind the lost lantern, or if this tavern would seal her fate forever. The chaos engulfed the tavern as screams sliced through the dimly lit room. Patrons rushed backward, some tripping over their own feet, their faces painted with terror. Emily's heart hammered relentlessly, an unsettling rhythm that drowned out all other sounds. The creature stepped into the flickering light, revealing itself in all its monstrous glory. It had a form half human, half beast, adorned with matted fur and elongated claws that dripped something dark and thick. The scent of fear mingled with the stench of decay as it advanced, each lumbering step causing the ground to quake beneath it. "Back to the walls," shouted a burly man, pushing others into the corners like they were cattle. His shout pulled Emily out of her stupor. She stumbled to the nearest wall, bracing for whatever this nightmare held. The man in the hat remained oddly composed while everyone around him was unraveling. He leaned forward, his fingers steepled under his chin, as if he were an audience to a play. "Why are you so calm?" Emily exclaimed, fury mixing with her fear. "Because it's only just begun," he replied with a smirk that sent a chill down her spine. The first patron who dared approach the creature met a gruesome fate. A swift swipe of its claw, and in an instant, a woman fell to the floor, a sanguine spray painting the walls as the tavern erupted into screams. "Run!" Emily's instincts kicked in. She pushed past the chaos, dodging fallen chairs and frantic bodies trying to escape. But where would they go? Outside was an abyss filled with unknown horrors. "Help! Someone help!" a voice cried, but the room was a whirlwind of horror. The creature turned its attention back to the group, its glowing eyes narrowing as if assessing its next target. Emily caught a glimpse of the woman at the bar, now shaking but with a sword clutched tight in her hand. The woman caught Emily's gaze and nodded, a silent invitation to join her. Without thinking, Emily rushed toward her, weaving through the panic-stricken crowd. "Stop!" the sword-wielding woman commanded as they huddled behind the bar. "We need to work together. If we focus, we might stand a chance. But it's too late for doubt." The woman snapped, voice steady even as her eyes held fear. "We fight or we die. Which will it be?" Just then, the creature lunged at them, a ballistic mass of sharp claws and deadly intent. Emily's blood turned to ice as she realized the beast was no longer just a nightmare, it was a reality, and all could be lost in seconds. With adrenaline surging, Emily grabbed a broken bottle from the bar, its jagged glass glistening with potential. Together, she yelled, rallying the others who had gathered behind their makeshift barrier. The beast roared again, and the patrons flinched, but a spark ignited in Emily. A plan formed in her mind, half-formed and desperate. They couldn't cower, they had to confront their fear. On my count 1, 2, 3. As they prepared to move, the hat-wearing man raised an eyebrow, a smirk creeping onto his lips. Choose wisely, my friends. You may end up fighting what you fear most, or what you truly desire. Emily felt a shiver run through her. What did that mean? But there was no time to ponder. The creature barreled toward them, and in that moment of desperation, bravery ignited in Emily's chest. Now, in sync, they charged, screams mingling with their shouts as Emily hurtled forward, aiming for the creature's exposed side. But would they make it out alive, or had they just entered the maw of their ultimate doom? As she surged ahead, another voice echoed in her head, you must choose, but what was she choosing? Everything hinged on the outcome of this clash, and the truth would be waiting. Would it reveal itself in blood and fury, or something deeper lurking in the shadows? The tavern trembled as the two forces collided, and with it, the night plunged deeper into darkness. The impact of the charge sent a shockwave through the tavern. Bodies collided as the creature's claws slashed through wood and flesh. Emily barely dodged the deadly swipe, her instincts screaming for her to move faster. The world morphed into a blur of chaos and screams, the air thick with the acrid smell of copper and fear. Keep going, the sword-wielding woman shouted, her voice cutting through the madness. Emily saw others attempting to gather around, but fear held most of them captive. It wasn't just the creature. It was the terror of the unknown that held them frozen. Emily's heart raced, every pulse urging her forward. Together with the woman, they stood determined. It felt like life and death, the tavern filled with desperation. Yet, there was a sliver of hope and energy spilling from them, pulling others silently into their circle. We can do this, Emily yelled, gripping the broken glass tightly. It was still jagged, its edge sharp. Charge! The beast turned, its glowing eyes locking onto her. It bared its jagged teeth, a horrid grin spreading across its grotesque face. Each step it took rattled the ground beneath them, resonating through the bones of those who huddled in fear. Stay together, the woman commanded, her voice steadying some of the wavering souls behind them. The creature lunged, and Emily barely managed to sidestep, slashing with the bottle at its flank. Glass met fur with a sickening crunch. Delighted screams and horrified gasps echoed as the creature jerked back, revealing a raw, bleeding wound oozing darkness. But Emily's victory was short-lived. The creature howled not in pain, but in rage. It turned, seeking revenge, and those who had rallied began to shrink away. More than one face reflected the uncomfortable truth. The struggle meant facing their own fears, something far more terrifying than the beast in front of them. No, stand with us, the woman shouted, but her plea was lost among the cacophony of disbelief. Panic rippled through the crowd. For every moment they hesitated, they lost ground, crumbling under the weight of doubt. With a blood-chilling roar, the beast lunged again, aiming for Emily. But just as it reached her, the woman thrust her sword forward, the blade piercing deep into the creature's chest. Blood sprayed like a gruesome fountain, drenching the bar in crimson. Emily felt an unexpected rush, fear and adrenaline blending into something potent. The beast recoiled, swatting the woman aside with a dismissive swipe. She landed hard, the sword clattering from her hand. Panic coursed through Emily as she dove to grab it. The creature turned, its attention once more locked onto her like a predator. Choose, echoed in her mind, confusing her further. Just moments ago, she had charged with fierce resolve. Now, it felt like the walls were closing in, isolating her in the eye of a storm of shadows. The man in the hat finally moved, stepping closer to the chaos. How do you want your story to end? He called to Emily, voice steady amidst the chaos. It sent a chill down her spine. He wasn't fighting, he was observing. How could he remain untouched when calamity reigned? Fight, Fight! The crowd chanted, but Emily felt their support waning. Doubt crept in. What if powerful forces were at play, more ominous than the creature itself? Now, she yelled back to the woman, who was pulling herself up, eyes fierce, hand reaching for her sword. But Emily's choice loomed before her. Did she fight the beast? Or did she confront the fact that fear could paralyze them all? The line between life and death lay thin. In a moment, everything became clear. The choice was hers, but the consequence was shared. As she gathered her breath and summoned all the bravery she could, she had to decide not just for herself, but for those who were counting on her. The moment hung heavy like a pendulum, and in it, the shadows whispered what would rise or fall when the dust finally settled. Emily's grip tightened around the hilt of the sword as time seemed to stretch, blending the throbbing beats of her heart with the swelling chaos surrounding her. The creature, savoring the smell of blood, shifted its focus, its eyes narrowing into malevolent slits fixated on her. She inhaled sharply, a knot forming in her throat. The mounting doubt crashed over her like a tidal wave, but from somewhere deep inside, an ember of defiance ignited. Together, she shouted, allowing a hint of desperation to seep into her voice. That flicker of hope resonated. Around her, a few heads nodded, and a shiver of determination sparked among the trembling crowd. They rallied as if pulled by invisible strings, ignited by the fear and adrenaline coursing through their veins. It was an infectious call to arms. The creature lunged again, its massive form charging like a freight train, claws outstretched, teeth glistening like daggers. But this time, something shifted in Emily. As its shadow darkened her face, she moved. She sidestepped, her body responding with the speed of instinct, and drove the sword fiercely into the creature's side. It roared in fury, its twisted shriek echoing through the tavern, drowning out everything else. Blood poured like a fountain, splashing across Emily's face, its warmth both horrifying and strangely empowering. The creature stumbled, the fury in its eyes replaced momentarily with shock, and the crowd erupted in cheers, a sound both foreign and exhilarating. "Keep pushing," the woman beside her yelled, breathless but fierce. Yet, just as hope flourished, the beast turned its head sharply, its gaze locking onto the man in the hat, who remained unervingly calm amidst the chaos. Emily's heart thudded in her chest. Who was he? Why was he not participating in this fight for survival? A sinking feeling bloomed in her stomach. Then, the beast, recovering from its injuries almost unnaturally fast, shifted toward the man. Emily's blood froze. "No," she screamed, but it was too late. The creature lunged, aiming to rend him apart. "Choose wisely," the man called, undeterred, amusement dancing in his eyes. Emily's mind raced. Protecting him could cost the group their hope, but letting him be harmed was unconscionable. She saw the fear in the onlookers' faces. They were still divided between courage and despair. She felt her pulse quicken, thinking about the choice she had to make. Did she run towards the beast and risk her life to defend the man? Or did she stand firm and hope he had a plan? Memories of their terrified faces flitted through her mind. Their lives rested on her decision. She could almost hear the unsteady breaths of the crowd inhaling hope or despair. "It's now or never," she shouted, mustering every ounce of confidence she could feign. "We fight together, or we lose everything." The crowd seemed to lean forward, the collective desperation fueling their resolve. But just as she prepared to charge forward, the man raised a hand, signaling her to wait. "The creature thrives on fear," he said, his voice steady like a heartbeat in her ear. "Confront it, and its power shall wane." "Emily," the woman urged, catching her eye, ready to support whatever choice she would make. The beast shook with fury, eyes darting between its prey and the man, its gruesome smile fading into confusion. Would she lead the charge, use the fear as a weapon against the beast? Or would she hesitate, caught up in uncertain thoughts about the man in the hat? With the ghost of doubt still lingering, Emily raised the sword high, the weight of her decision settling heavy in the air. The crowd took a breath collectively, waiting for her answer, a moment suspended, moments away from annihilation or salvation. The clash that would determine its fate lay within her hands. Would she rise to face the monstrosity head-on, or would she find herself standing paralyzed by the weight of her own fears? As the beast's roar sliced through the tension, the question reverberated. Who was truly in control, the monster or them? The air crackled with tension, thick as the shadows lurking in the corners of the tavern. Emily's heart raced, the sword feeling heavier with every passing second. She could feel the fear radiating from the crowd around her, palpable and raw. The creature, wounded but furious, shifted its weight, muscles coiling like a spring, preparing for what felt like inevitable destruction. Do it, the woman beside her urged, eyes wide with a mix of dread and anticipation. The man in the hat stood unmoving, an island of calm in a storm, his smirk now replaced with an inscrutable expression. He seemed to possess some hidden knowledge, a twisted trick up his sleeve. Emily's instinct screamed at her. Was he a savior or a trap? With a deep breath, she gripped the sword tighter. We confront it, she shouted, her voice strong, laced with conviction despite the tremors rippling through her body. The crowd rallied around her, the sound of their shouts filling the void of her uncertainty. The beast lunged again, dark and menacing, its eyes blazing like two crimson suns. This time, she would not sidestep, she would stand firm. Channeling every ounce of her fear into rage, she drove the blade forward with a fierce shout. Blood misted through the air once more, splattering the worn tavern walls, and with it, a flicker of light ignited in the others. I can't lose you, a voice cried out, barely above a whisper, slicing through her perception. She glanced to her left, seeing a young boy clutching a makeshift weapon, a broom handle that he wielded like a knight would his lance. His innocent face was twisted in reflection of pure terror, and it pierced her heart. This was for them not just to survive, but so they could live. As the creature recoiled from her attack, Emily straightened her back, emboldened. We fight for our lives. The sound of her voice bounced around the room, a call to arms that broke through the fog. The crowd surged forward, spurred by her words, a tide of bravery against the dark. Yet the beast was not so easily deterred. It howled, a sound that rattled the tavern's very foundations, and lunged at the man again. Emily moved. Her instincts kicked in. She didn't think, she just reacted. She charged forward, the world slowed, her feet pounding against the floorboards. She barely felt the rough texture of the sword handle in her palm as she swung with all her might. Time stretched, and she braced herself, praying that the man was right, that they could drain the creature's power with their courage. In that pivotal moment, the man turned. Confront your fear, he shouted, but this time his eyes were fixated on her. There was something in his gaze, a connection that sent a shiver down her spine. Just as she swung again, the beast stumbled sideways, caught off guard by the joint force of her resolve and the shrieks of the crowd. It slewed back, bloodied and glaring with a primal rage that turned the air thick and cold. And yet, that calm held by the man in the hat slipped away, finally replaced by urgency. The light, he yelled. It's the only way. Light? Emily repeated, a surge of questions flooding her mind. What light? Should she turn to the windows? The fireplace? But before she could process further, the creature launched toward her, jaws snapping. Instinct took over. She wanted to give in to panic, to run. But she held her ground, raising the sword high. It roared, its breath hot and rancid against her skin. Then, in an instant of clarity, she swept the blade downward, not at the monster, but toward the ground. The weight of the sword struck true, and in that fleeting moment, a blinding flash erupted from the tavern floor, illuminating the space with an intensity that felt alive. The creature let out a horrifying wail, momentarily stunned by the brightness. Emily felt it, the fear, the weight of the crowd, even her own trepidation shivering away. Hope surged as the light embraced her like a long-lost friend. But even as that flicker of confidence ignited something within her, the ceiling groaned ominously. What have you done? The man gasped, eyes wide with realization. Emily, it's not just the beast. The woman cried, stepping back as the ground trembled beneath them. The tavern was coming apart, and she hadn't just confronted the beast. She'd unleashed something they might not be ready to face. As silence blanketed the chaos, shadows loomed larger, and creatures unseen stirred. Was the worst yet to come? The light flickered, and the heart of the tavern crumbled. With the walls shaking, Emily's heart raced. What would emerge from the wreckage of their actions? Would they find true salvation, or deepen their darkest fears? In the echoes of the beast's howl, her answer beckoned, yet uncertain shadows gripped her thoughts. What other horrors lurked, ready to strike? And who, really, was the man in the hat? The blinding light from Emily's sword pulsed through the tavern, brighter than anything she had ever experienced. It flickered erratically before plunging back into the darkness, shimmering like a candle in the wind. The air was electric, teeming with an energy that sent shivers coursing down her spine. "What is happening?" she shouted over the rumble of the collapsing tavern, desperate to be heard above the chaos. The man in the hat, his expression now stark with horror, took a step back, shadows darting around him as if alive. "You've awakened them, Emily." His voice trembled, betraying the calm facade he once wore. Panic flared in his eyes, glinting with an unyielding urgency. The crowd was a sea of fear, faces twisted in confusion and terror. Emily's heart sank as she absorbed their collective dread. Was she leading them into the mouth of a deeper darkness? "What do you mean?" she pressed, unable to shake the feeling that something much worse was brewing beneath the surface. The tremors intensified, and the floorboards splintered, letting out tortured shrieks as if the very foundations of the tavern were fighting against the awakening force. From the cracks in the wood, shadowy forms oozed, curling around the legs of stools and tables, slithering closer with an insatiable hunger. "Old spirits. They crave the light you drew from the ground," he screamed over the cacophony. "We did not just strike at the beast. We opened the door." Emily's mind raced. The tavern wasn't just a refuge. It was a threshold, a boundary between the living and something sinister lurking in the dark. She tightened her grip on the sword, the heat from the spectral light still faintly glowing. "Everyone, get back," she shouted, urging the crowd to retreat toward the far wall. The young boy with the broomstick stood frozen, wide-eyed and trembling. Her heart ached. She couldn't let fear hold him captive. "We need to stick together," she encouraged, her voice breaking through his trance. The boy blinked, seemingly breaking free from the throes of terror, and began helping others to safety. His innocent determination reminded her why she had fought, the hope in their eyes, the need to protect those too vulnerable to fend for themselves. But beyond the darkened corners of the tavern, shadows thickened, swirling and merging with a will of their own. The air turned foul, a scent of decay wafted through. Whispers crawled through the air, unnatural and hissing. They murmured her name, laced with malice. "Emily, come play with us," they beckoned. The voices slithered through her ears, invading her mind with a chill that made her skin crawl. "No," she shouted, her voice fierce. "I am not afraid of you." As she spoke, a thunderous boom resonated, and the ceiling above the bar split wide open. Fragments of wood and plaster rained down. Without thinking, she yelled for the others to move. "Now, to the exit." The mob of frightened patrons surged toward the door, fear propelling them like a wave. But Emily lingered, eyes locked on the shadows that roiled with intent. The man in the hat bolted toward her. "You must go, Emily. You can't fight it alone." "Alone? I'm not alone." The defiance in her voice only barely masked the tremor in her gut. The crowd was her strength, and the light had sparked more than raw fear. It ignited courage that shimmered in those around her. With a deep breath, she held the sword high again, its light flickering as if beckoning for attention. "Bring your darkness if you dare. I will not yield." But the shadows retreated for only a heartbeat, regrouping, their whispers growing into a banshee wail, rage boiling from the depths. They surged, a tide of despair, clawing at the threshold Emily had unwittingly breached. Just when she thought everything was lost, a surge of wind swept through the tavern, chasing the shadows back momentarily. It was powerful, magnetic, a force that seemed drawn toward her sword. What was happening? There was a connection she could barely comprehend. "Emily," the man shouted again. "We need to close it now?" Before she could process, the air shifted again. A pulsing circle of soft light formed at her feet, drawing her in. As the shadows recoiled, a single figure detached itself from the morphing mass, a gaunt humanoid, dripping with darkness, its eyes glowing like burning coals. "What will you choose, brave girl?" it rasped, its voice a chilling caress. "To fight, or to join us?" Emily's heart raced, a storm of emotions swirling within her. She had ignited something deep in this cursed tavern, But at what cost? And what choices lay ahead? With shadows creeping ever closer, her resolve steeled. She could either step into the dark or forge a path into the blinding light. The taverness fate, and perhaps the world beyond it, now rested squarely in her hands. What would she choose? The whispers grew louder, inching closer, threatening to drown her in their noise. Was the light truly the answer, or just another trap waiting to ensnare her? The figure before her loomed larger, an extension of the gathering shadows. Emily could feel the air around her thicken, turning heavy with the weight of its presence. The other patrons pressed against the far wall, eyes wide, breaths held. She sensed their collective heartbeat, a frantic rhythm that echoed her own. "Choose," Emily the creature taunted, its voice dripping with a mix of invitation and threat. "You can harness the power that calls to you, or relinquish it to the darkness." She thought of the boy, the tavern, the lives that hung in the balance. No way was she letting this thing win. She took a step back, gathering her thoughts amidst the chaos. "What power? What are you?" Its laughter was a haunting melody, twisting through the air like smoke. "I am a messenger of the forgotten, awakened by your light. You've opened a door that was meant to remain shut. The consequences will be dire if you choose to fight against us." The shadows behind it writhed, pulling closer to Emily, whispering promises of power and knowledge. Some voices pleaded with her, while others roared in fury. Her mind swam with distorted truths, the kind that could lead her to glory or to ruin. Sudden realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. The power the figure spoke of it could corrupt, could endanger everything she loved. She had to regain control. "You want my choice?" she shouted, clutching the sword. "Here it is. I will not join you." A ripple of energy pulsed from her, pushing back against the figure. It screeched, and the shadows pulled away momentarily. But with that defiance came a terrible consequence. The air crackled electric, reverberating through the timber walls, splitting the air like a whip. "Foolish girl," it howled, reforming as the shadows converged wildly, a dark storm drawn to her light. "You've chosen destruction." The tavern shook violently, plaster crumbling like dry leaves, and splintering wood flying through the air as darkness collided with her radiant sword. Emily felt herself teetering on the brink. The glow from her sword flickered dangerously as if struggling against an unseen force. "Get out, now," she screamed to the crowd, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Run." People surged toward the exit, but the door refused to budge. Panic spread like wildfire. The boy, clutching his broomstick, stood frozen again, caught between fear and Emily's fierce determination. "You must go," she urged him. "I'll hold them back." But even as she said it, she feared she might not be strong enough. The shadows curled around her ankles, biting at her spirit. She felt their cold breath against her skin, their whispers trying to seep into her very soul. "Hold your ground," she yelled, summoning the last of her will, raising her sword high. The blade arched above her, illuminating the dark with renewed brilliance. "I will not succumb to you." The hum of energy rose, pulsing at her fingertips, swelling with a burning resolve. But the shadows surged again, an overwhelming tide of darkness and despair, the tendrils snaking up her legs, binding her in place. Then, at the apex of her struggle, a blinding flash exploded from the sword, a shockwave that sent the shadows reeling back and, for a moment, the tavern stilled. In that heartbeat of silence, a sudden thought struck her. Was she truly alone in this fight? Before she could ponder the implications, a crack echoed. Tearing through the stagnant air, a fissure appeared in the wood floor, glowing with an unsettling light as if a new realm was breaking through. Will she embrace this unexpected danger or find help in her darkest hour? The answers whispered in the shadows she fought so hard to outrun, as new figures began to emerge from the cracking earth, cloaked in mystery and fear. What would they want from her? And more importantly, would they lend her the strength to turn the tide? The militant silence poised before chaos hung in the air, a haunting reminder that the battle was far from over. Emily felt the weight of the world pressing down. The tavern shook fiercely, and shadows writhed around her like angry serpents. Fear clawed at her heart, its icy grip tightening with every breath. But through it all, an ember of courage flickered inside her, reminding her of the stakes. She had come too far to back down now. The fissure in the floor pulsed brightly, casting a mysterious glow on the walls. From it, figures began to emerge much like the fearsome creature she had faced, but different. They were cloaked in darkness, yet their shapes bore semblances of humanity. Ghostly expressions danced in the flickering light, their eyes devoid of malice but filled with sorrow. Were these the lost souls that once walked the earth? "Help us!" one of them cried, their voice trembling with yearning. "We've been trapped. Set us free." Emily felt her heart race even faster. These were not enemies. They were victims, just like the patrons shaking behind her. The whispers of the shadows grew softer, retreating for now, but she needed to act. "No more," she declared, the sword illuminating her determination. "You want to join forces?" She turned to the crowd. "We must all fight together if we wish to break this curse." Courage surged through her words. She could see some faces changing, fear shifting to resolve. The sword hummed in her grip. Channeling some ancient magic she only now began to understand. The souls beckoned her, their shadows blending into her own. Maybe they were remnants not of evil, but of lost hope, fractured pieces waiting to heal. The man in the hat finally stepped forward, eyes wide with clarity. "You've unearthed a power that can either lead to destruction or salvation. It lies within you. Not just me." Emily shot back, gathering more strength. "We do this together. Together." The crowd echoed, emboldened by her call. The young boy gripped his broom tightly, eyes resolute as he joined the others. Watching them, Emily felt the current of hope flow through her. With fierce resolve, she raised her sword, its light piercing through the unsettled darkness, and stepped toward the fissure. "If you wish to be freed, come to us," she implored the spirits, "and we'll fight as one against this darkness." An answering surge of light pushed through the cracks beneath her feet, shimmering brighter, illuminating the souls. They roared with unearthly power, spiraling up to meet her. Together, they became a whirlwind of light against the suffocating shadows, a combined force of defiance against darkness. "Now!" Emily shouted, propelling the energy forward as the sword arched above, releasing a radiant beam that clashed with the shadows swirling around them. "Face it head-on," she encouraged, feeling the spirits flow with her. The creature roared, its grotesque form vibrating between the two converging forces. Shadows roared, furious at being challenged. Emily felt the vibrations of darkness retreating, battered by the relentless light they emitted together, but the battle was still intense. The tension thickened, threatening to rip apart the tenuous thread of hope they wove. As the ground quaked, Emily remained rooted, embodying the collective strength of everyone around her, the boy, the terrified patrons, and even the fragile spirits. "Choose courage, not fear," she bellowed, feeling her heart synchronize with the souls around her. And they surged forward, propelled by gritty determination, their joint cries piercing the dark air as the darkness writhed in a series of brilliant flashes. The light pushed through claws and teeth. The spirits howled with delight, joining hands with the living, illuminating the way forward. The creature staggered back, glaring in disbelief as light engulfed it in that moment. Everything collapsed into brilliance. The tavern shook violently, but Emily held firm, the sword channeling ancient energy through her. The shadows surged, but they were losing, their fury subsiding under the relentless assault. "No more," she cried, every ounce of her being pouring into the blade. "Be gone." With a final explosion of light, the last of the darkness shattered, fragments floating like ashes. Silence followed, embracing Emily and all those who stood with her. Then, one by one, the spirits began to fade, gentle smiles exuding gratitude. They had been freed at last. Emily dropped to her knees, breathing heavily. The tavern around her was scarred but intact. She was surrounded by faces that, moments before, had been riddled with terror but now glowed with newfound hope. The man in the hat stepped forward, his smirk replaced by solemnity. "You've done well, Emily. You've chosen the path of light, and in doing so, you freed not just the lost souls but yourselves." Tears pricked at her eyes, relief, joy, and the weight of what they had endured merged into one. "Are we safe now?" the young boy asked, still clutching his broomstick, innocence shining through the remnants of fear. Emily nodded slowly, the broken tavern echoing with whispers of healing, of stories waiting to be reborn. Yes, she sighed, realizing the bond forged in battle. We can rebuild. The shadows of the past had retreated, but the memories would always remain. This was the beginning of something new, a chance to embrace the light. As she stood among her newfound friends, she knew they would carry this moment into the future, one filled with promise. "Let us go home," she said, leading them from the wreckage of the lost lantern. Her heart swelled with a fierce warmth. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger. Together, they would face whatever life threw their way if only they knew what awaited them next. Remember, heroes aren't born. They are made in moments of darkness. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive adventures. Smash that like button now to keep the algorithm growing strong. I want to hear your reactions and theories about this epic conclusion. Flood the comments section. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this tale. Your support matters, and only true fans know the importance of keeping this community alive. Let us do this together.